Hello and welcome to Jazz Guitar Chord Melody Part 8. Hi, this is Mike Hayes, and before we get started, just a quick reminder that if this is the first video you've seen in the series, or if you'd like to do some catch-up work on some of the previous lessons, there's a link in the description below to all the previous Jazz Guitar Chord Melody lessons. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you'll be notified as soon as the next video in the series is available. Right at the end of our previous lesson, I played a passing chord version of Ode to Joy. And so I'm going to begin this session by explaining just what I did to come up with that passing chord version. Since we're working in the key of G major, our first step will be to create a reference chart of the scale tone 7th chords created from the G major scale. And we create these chords by overlaying the scale like a layer cake. And we're overlaying the scale at a particular interval distance. We're overlaying the scale in a series of thirds. So if you're a person that thinks in terms of modes, one way of describing this would be we would take the Ionian mode, the G Ionian mode, then we'd overlay the B Phrygian scale, that'd be the G scale starting on the 3rd note, and then overlaying those two modes with the D Mixolydian, that would be starting on the D note in the G scale, and then one more layer, the F sharp Locrian. Now if all that sounds complicated, you don't have to worry, because if you look on the screen, I have a chart which is the result of all this layering business. What is important at the moment is why are we doing it? And why we're doing this is that we want to find the scale tone 7th chords, that is the 4-note chord structures that are created when we overlay a scale 3 times at an interval distance of a third. And the result of all this, as you can see on the screen, is that you end up with a different set of chords than we previously did when we harmonized the major 6th diminished scale. So ultimately, it's to give us a different set of colors, an optional way of framing our melody. Now it's time to take our new set of chords and work out a satisfactory way of playing these chords on the guitar. The way the scale tone 7th chords are presented on our chart at the moment are what we call root position chords. And if we were to try and play these chords with that particular note sequence, we'd find it quite difficult to play. It can be done, but it makes it quite cumbersome. And these are typical block chords that are easy to play, or easier to play, I should say, on a piano. So in order to have these chords more playable on the guitar, we have to invert them. So one way that we can do this is to take the 2nd note from the bottom and place it on top of the chord. Let's have a look at how this works on the guitar. Now, I'm going to use a G major 7th, and you can see I have different colours for each of these notes. The red note represents the root note. The blue note is the 3rd of the chord, the orange note is the D, the 5th, and the pink note is the F sharp, or the major 7th. Now as you can see, this chord is not hard to play. However, when we move through the rest of the scale tone 7th chords, for example the A minor 7th shape, it becomes a little bit more tricky. My point is that some of the shapes would be difficult to play not only physically, but most importantly, it would be difficult to play a chord melody arrangement smoothly using these block chord voicings. Now, block chord voicings are important, and some guitar players use them to great effect, so we'll be revisiting the block chord voicings in a later lesson. But for the moment, we're looking at trying to get the smoothest transition of theory across to the guitar fingerboard. So let's go back to that G major 7th chord that we have in the different colours, and now I'm going to take the B note, the 2nd note from the bottom, and move him up an octave. And now here is the same chord, just opened up with that inversion trick that we did before by taking the second note from the bottom, moving it up an octave, and here's the same notes in the same colour coding, just rearranged with this new inversion of the chord. Back to our scale tone 7th chart, and we're going to use the same strategy, that is, moving the second note from the bottom up an octave. We're going to do this with each chord in the key of G. And now it's time to get all these new chord voicings under our fingers. So I'm going to play the scale tone 7th set of chords in the key of G. I'm going to play each chord and let it ring for 4 beats. I'll be playing the scale ascending only, and I'll play the sequence through twice. Here we go. Right, so we've done all this groundwork so that we can make a passing chord arrangement of Ode to Joy. Now, as you get used to the concept, you'll be able to look for certain tunes that have a certain quality where this type of passing chord arrangement will work. So what we're saying is that melodies that have a scale-like quality, that is, where the tune or sections of the tune move either ascending or descending in a scale-like manner. And if you have a look at Ode to Joy, you'll see that this does meet that criteria. The notes are moving up and down a G scale. Once you've got those scale tone 7th chord shapes under your fingers, the concept of creating a passing chord arrangement is really quite simple. What we're looking for is a chord from our scale tone 7th family that will fit under the melody note. So I'll just walk you through the first 4 bars to start with. So I can see that the melody note is B, and if I check my G major 7th chord, you will discover that the note B is on the first string. So that's an ideal chord to use for the B note. Moving along the melody, the next note is a B, so I can still use the G major 7th chord, or I can decide to just play that B note as a single note. The third note in bar 1 is the note C. Now if I have a look at the A minor 7th chord, the second chord in our scale tone 7th series, and using the voicing that we just learnt, you will see that the C note sits very nicely under the A minor 7th shape. So that's an ideal chord to use there. The fourth note, the same idea. B minor 7 will work really well. It's the same shape as the A minor 7th, just move it up 2 frets, and the melody note once again is on the first string, right under our fingers in the B minor 7th shape. Okay, you're probably getting the idea by now. The next bar, B minor 7th under the D note, A minor 7th under the C. We're just coming back to where we started and back to the B note in the melody using the G major 7th shape. For the A note, I'm going to play an F sharp half diminished. For the G note, I'm going to play E minor 7th. As you can see, it's not that hard to do. Once again, the next melody note is a G, so we could either play the E minor 7th chord again or play the melody note as a single note. The A note, that's where we'd use the F sharp half diminished again. Up to the B note, that would be G major 7th. Into bar 4, and the melody note is B, so we know that would be G major 7th. The next melody note is an A. However, it is only for a short duration. It's only for a half a beat. And in order to keep this arrangement smooth, I would play that as a single note. The next note, however, rings for 2 beats, so I'd go back to the concept of putting a chord under it. I'd play an F sharp half diminished under that A note. So what I'm trying to do here is to create a smooth texture, rather like 4 saxophones in a big band. As we move on to the next 3 bars, bars 5, 6 and 7 of Ode to Joy, we can use the exact same set of chords as we used in bars 1, 2 and 3, because the melody is exactly the same. It's only in bar 8 where the melody changes. Let's have a look at what we'd do there. There's an A note, so I'd play my F sharp half diminished under that. The next melody note, the G note, is only for a short duration, so in the spirit of keeping things smooth, I'd play that as a single note. And then the last note, the G, ringing for 2 beats, I'd play an E minor 7th chord. Now if we just take a moment to compare the original basic vanilla set of chords that we had above the melody in Ode to Joy, if we compare that with our passing chord arrangement, and I've marked in all the chords so you can check your work with mine, you'll notice that it looks really quite complex. And this is the type of thing that you'd see, say, with a chord melody arrangement from, say, Barney Kessel or Joe Pass or somebody like that, Jim Hall. And these arrangements look difficult because although they're telling us what Barney Kessel, Herb Ellis, Bill Frisell or Jim Hall played, they're not telling us why they played it. So I find it very satisfying if you can understand the underlying concepts and apply them to your own melodies, and then later on if you're looking at an arrangement of Stella by Starlight by Jim Hall or somebody like that, you can start analysing and seeing some things that are familiar to you, and you can see how the artist applied some of these colours and these textures to their arrangement. So in turn, you can look at the concept and how in turn you will be able to adapt some of these ideas to your own style of playing. So let's round out this session by listening to that passing chord arrangement of Ode to Joy, the first 8 bars that I played on the last session. Only this time you'll have an understanding of where I got the resources from to play this arrangement. Okay, there we go. So I do hope you've got something out of this session, and as always, I look forward to catching up with you next time. Don't forget, if you've got any questions or comments, pop them in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next session. Bye for now.